Morning, everyone. As Pepe was saying, I am going to present main results related to the analysis of communication about aquaculture in mass media in the Mediterranean area. So in this presentation, I'm going to follow this scheme, this structure that is a standard for presentations. First of all, beginning with the introduction of the task and the objectives we wanted to achieve. Our main objective was to study the mass media coverage of aquaculture of sea bass and sea bream in the Mediterranean area and its potential impact on the demand and prices of this type of aquaculture products. So what we wanted to know, what we have been doing is trying to analyze how the news and information provided by mass media in the Mediterranean area may affect or impact the demand of aquaculture products, and specifically the demand of products related to sea bass and sea bream. In order to do so, we undertook three different studies. First of all, a semi-quantitative study based on experts' opinions. That is, the Delphi method was used to assess the effects of news characteristics on aquaculture demand, or to which extent different characteristics that news about aquaculture may have could impact the demand of this type of products. So, as we are going to see in a minute, we asked the experts which, in their opinion, were the main characteristics of the news that could have a higher impact on consumers and demand. In a second study, we tried to identify the whole amount of news that were published about aquaculture in mass media in the Mediterranean area, and in particular in Spain, and to analyze the content of those news to know how was the communication made by mass media about aquaculture, in terms of balance of tone of the news, or the topics that they were covering, the length of the news, and so on. And finally, with this information about the pieces of information or the news published in the Mediterranean area about aquaculture, in a third study, we built an index that was formed with the main characteristics identified in the first study that could impact the demand of aquaculture, and introduced this index in a model to measure how the amount of information provided or published by mass media could impact the demand of sea bass of sea bream products. So going to the first study, this study, as I was saying, was focused on trying to analyze which characteristics of news related to aquaculture may be more influential in terms of the effect on demand. In order to do so, first of all, we identified a list of possible characteristics of the news, its length, the tone of or balance of the news, if they had a positive approach or a negative approach towards aquaculture, if they contained pictures or videos, and so on. And we presented these different characteristics of news about aquaculture to a sample of experts in the field of aquaculture that were mainly taken from the Midate project. In total, we finally had 29 experts from different countries in the Mediterranean area and from different disciplines. And those experts were sent a questionnaire in which they had to express their opinion about the potential effect of these news characteristics on aquaculture demand in a scale from 0 to 10. So in this first round, we obtained the evaluation or the assessment of each of the experts, and then we sent them a second questionnaire containing the same scales, the same questions, but also the average value obtained for each question in the first round. So the idea here was to make these experts, the referees, to reflect on their previous opinion and revise them if they consider it appropriate according to the average value expressed by all the experts. No? So the idea in this Delphi methods is to obtain a convergence of opinions towards a robust result, no quantitative value obtained from these subjective opinions of the experts. Well, the main results obtained from this Delphi method was that the topic of the news that could have a bigger influence on demand were human health and environment. So news related to human health and environment could have higher impact in demand than other topics that could be covered by the news. The experts also indicated that a smaller news may have a higher impact also on demand, being more influential than longer or to excessively long news about aquaculture. And they also considered that informational or more divulgative news could have a higher impact on demand, on consumers' response towards aquaculture products than more technical news. No? And finally, they also expressed that containing pictures or videos could increase the possible influence of the news on consumers' demand of aquaculture products. No? In those were the main results of this first study. And then in a second study, once we have a value, assessment of how different characteristics of the news may impact the demand, we intended to analyze which was the amount of news that was published on mass media about aquaculture in the Mediterranean countries, and how those news were, which were the real characteristics of the news covering the topic of aquaculture in a Mediterranean country, in this case in Spain. So here the analysis was not focused in a specific type of aquaculture, but on aquaculture in general. And we also considered a specific species of aquaculture products such as sea bass, sea bream, salmon, and pangasius, because they are competitors, and the demand of one may affect the demand of other related products. So we developed a news search using the online tools provided by the 5 bigger newspapers in Spain, and we gathered the news related to aquaculture during the period from 2013 to 2017. And in order to gather the news related to the sector of aquaculture, we used the keywords that are shown in the slide that are related to aquaculture and fish farming, but also to fish species and to general concepts related to marine resources and seawater, because they are directly the consumption of fish is related to the consumption of aquaculture fish. In total, we found 3,381 news, including at least one of the keywords used in the research. But of these more than 3,000 news, only 305 were directly or indirectly related to aquaculture. And of those 305, 154 were specifically focused on aquaculture. There was lots of news that were not related to aquaculture because, for example, they used the word salmon as a color instead of as a fish species. And for example, the Spanish word for sea bass is dorada, that means golden. So again, this word appeared a lot with a meaning not related to fish or aquaculture. Well, the main results related to the content of the news identified in the research were that most of the news gathered focused on salmon and aquaculture in general, and less than 10% of the news were related to sea bass or sea bream. So the mass media coverage of sea bass and sea bream is very small in a country like Spain. Of the 305 news, more than 50% were positive. But when we only analyzed the news that contained keywords directly related to aquaculture, like fish farming, aquaculture, and so on, only or less than 40% were or had a positive approach, a positive tone. No, more than 60% of news directly related to aquaculture had a negative tone. The news analyzed in general, these 305 news were mainly related to human health, or human health is the main topic in the whole set of news. But news specifically focused on aquaculture are more related to economy, environment, and human health also. And finally, the news focused on aquaculture are in general longer, have a technical approach, a global scope, so an international scope, and include pictures or videos. Well, once we had this information about the total set of news published in Spain about aquaculture in this 5-year period, in the third study, we intended to build an index that accounted for the evolution of the total messages or news present in mass media. And so we wanted to know, or to have an indicator of the total information covered in mass media about aquaculture each month. And this index was computed using the average of the most relevant indicators identified in the first step of the task, that were mainly the number of news, the tone or balance of the news, if they were positive or negative about agriculture, and if they were directly related to aquaculture or only indirectly related to aquaculture. So the index was introduced as an exogenous variable in a demand system, like the one you have in the slide, following the specifications from tax 6.2 and tested into a VAR system. And our results showed that the parameter accounting for the effect of the index on the changes in sea bream retail sales are significant and positive. So the more news covering the topic of aquaculture and the more positive tone have a positive impact on the demand of these type of products. And that sea bream sales increase when the news released in the media show a favorable position towards aquaculture. No? And in the contrary, unfavorable news about aquaculture have a negative effect on sales of sea bream in particular. So, as main conclusions and recommendations, according to the experts contacted in our Delphi method, news about aquaculture will have a bigger impact on demand if they are focused on health and environment, if they are shorter, more informational than technical, and if they include picture or videos. Again, in our second study, we found out that most news on aquaculture published by mass media in Spain are related to economy, environment, and human health, and include picture or video, but are long and have a technical approach. And those characteristics may work worse in order to have an impact on demand. And the number of news, the balance, and the degree of relation with aquaculture were found to be correlated with the quantitative sold of sea bream during the observed period, according to the models that we estimated in the third study of the task. Just to finish, some recommendations about how to manage the sector according to the results we obtained in our studies. Well, we have to undertake a proactive and professional management of the relationship with mass media. And this implies, first of all, having a detailed and updated list of relevant media for the sector. So which are the media that have more readers or that may have more impact on our potential market, and having a clear list, an updated list of which are those media. Then we have to establish a continuous contact with media professionals and journalists, and a personal interaction with them. So they are willing to listen what we have to say about aquaculture. So they take our opinions and our information into consideration. We, of course, have to capture, elaborate, and send information to mass media. The probability of having our information published in mass media is much higher if we give the work done to journalists and professionals. If it's easier for them to elaborate the information because we provide them very, very structured and complete information, and they will probably publish the information, or they will be more willing to publish the information. Sending the information to the media is only the first step. We have to assure that content is published properly and in the appropriate date and place. And of course, we have to follow up and monitor any news about aquaculture that are published by mass media, either with an origin in our own organization or with any other origin. But we have to listen what mass media are telling about aquaculture to manage the reaction or the response towards this information they are providing. If we want to give any response, we have to know what they are saying about aquaculture. And this is everything for my part. Thank you very much.